Hey, good evening, afternoon, and welcome to Evenings in LJ. I want to do a new little study for you out of the book of Second Thessalonians. We're going to be looking at chapter 2, really in the verses 1 through 15, the whole chapter. Now, of course, got my Bravo hat on, which is giving a shout out to the Atlanta Braves who won the World Series. But anyway, um, today, I want to start the study, if you're like me, you've noticed and you probably have felt that something is really up in our world. It seems like darkness is closing in. The shadows seem to be bigger than ever before of the things that are yet to come. And of course, that's good news because anytime something is closer to you, the larger the shadow it's going to produce. And so obviously the shadows that would foreshadow the tribulation period are starting to show on our scene, and they're getting bigger and bigger, which makes you wonder how close could the end really be to our Lord's, to this world and the Lord's return in glory for us as the church. And of course, following that, the tribulation period. Now, we notice with the radical progression of the political agenda of our day that's afoot, and we see the progressive movement of governments in our day, we have to wonder how much longer do we really have? And it feels as if the final world empire, the beast governments of the book of Daniel that Daniel saw in his visions, seem to be organizing almost in front of our eyes, and they're assembling and beginning to get greater and greater influence and impact on the world that you and I are living in today. And so we know, according to what Daniel saw, that the one world government is going to be global, it's going to be godless, it's going to be gory because of the killing of those who will not submit and receive the mark of the beast and worship the image or the number of the beast. So we know it's going to be gory. Now, if you haven't noticed it, we are under massive surveillance in our culture and really across the globe. There are cameras everywhere, listening devices everywhere, tracking systems in almost everything. Our phones, our TVs, our computers, our cars, our helpful devices we have in our home, like Alexa, and those kinds of things. We also notice in our day that there is a media bias that is bent on breaking any one nation's nationalism while pushing us towards this idea of globalism, which is anti-biblical, because we know in the book of Acts, chapter 17, that God has chosen to establish nations so that they might seek and find him. So God has chosen to minister to nations, not to one global body. Anyway, we also recognize it, or at least it feels as if there is this malicious government overreach going on, where we're being forced to comply with our state's agenda or our national agenda, or else in our day, it isn't yet that we lose our life, but we might lose our job. We might lose our ability to travel. It may be that we no longer have access to health care or healthcare facilities. It may be that who knows what, it might not be able to shop in public. All of these things are all of a sudden a reality on the horizon. Meanwhile, legislation of these things is getting greater and greater, and governmental control over its citizenry is growing, and it's becoming massive. And still, for the average person, they go along blindly and thinking, oh, well, it's just for our good, it's for our safety. And so it kind of fits their overall worldview. And, what can we expect from a nation of people who are filled with a desire to reject God and to reject God's truth? And so I personally would say that we as a nation, and probably globally this is true as well, though there might be pockets that's not true of, we are on this full-scale Roman road descent into depravity. The Bible has educated us on the fact that this would happen, that the deceptions would originate from the prince of the power of the air. They would be orchestrated and disseminated through the ranks of fallen angels. And we as society would be sucked in hook, line, and sinker because we have a fallen nature and we have become more and more godless as a society. And so we are very vulnerable. We are primed and we are ready for the Antichrist, for a worldwide deception is what I would call it. You say, Brother Rick, could this really happen? Could we really be deceived on a global scale? My friend, not only do I believe it can happen, I believe it has been happening. I believe it's happening today. And I believe it will continue to happen, growing in intensity and in scope. And while most people just see it as some sort of geopolitical movement or idealism or whatever, it is instead a reaping of the whirlwind as we have rebelled against God. And so what would I say to believers here? What would I say to those of you who love Christ and want to serve him? I would say that it's imperative that you and I remain spiritually alert, anchored in biblical truth, faithful to God, who is our creator, and focused on our mission as light bearers for Jesus Christ, letting God use us to proclaim the truth that sets people free from the lies and the deception before we are caught away and our neighbors and our friends and our loved ones are swept up in the ultimate deception and are damned through their unbelief and rejection of God. Now, in order to make these things where you can sit through them pretty quickly and go back to your work, maybe after a break or whatever, I'm going to try to keep these to 10 minutes or so. So at this point, I'm just going to stop and say that's kind of our introduction. I'll come back and in the next couple of segments, I will lay this out as I see it in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. God bless you, and may you be blessed of the Lord and prosperous in your ministry as you serve him as a light bearer in a day of great darkness and deception.